I'm Kelly Blackledge from Tamarac National Wildlife Refuge, and today I want to take you on a little trip to go bird watching. This is a great time and a great social distancing thing to do is to go bird watching. So let's take a look at some of the birds that I like to look at in my backyard, as well as some that you might see if you take a trip out to the refuge. Spring birds are really my favorite time to look at birds. There's so many new birds arriving. It's just fun to go out into the field. It's great to have a pair of binoculars with you, even if you're at home looking in your backyard, to identify the birds. But you can also identify them by looking at their general shape, by watching their behavior, and by sound. So let's look at some birds by sound and sight. Now, birds can get you up pretty early in the morning. This one is one of the earliest birds to start calling. I'm sure you know this one, the American robin, and she has such a great sound. It kind of sounds like cheerio, cheerily, cheery up, cheerio, cheerily. Let's take a listen. Now that's a great song to wake up to. There's other birds, of course, in our backyard that are fun to watch. If you live near water, this one is also kind of an early bird and very loud. This one is the red-winged blackbird. I bet you recognize this. And of course, it's got a call that we recognize pretty well. The red-winged blackbird sings "O-ka-ree." They can really bolt out a sound. And of course, you can recognize this one by the red wings. Some birds are named pretty easily that way. Not a lot of guessing in how the red-winged blackbird gets its name, with those neat little covert feathers on its shoulders. And of course, those can be covered up. They really expose them a lot in the spring as they're trying to attract a female. So that song and flipping those shoulder feathers up really are kind of fun to watch. Now, one that I like to hear in the morning is the western meadowlark, although I don't live in a place where I get to hear it. If you go out to Hampton Slough or live in a place where there's some open areas, the western meadowlark is a beautiful sound in the morning, and they are great at perching themselves on a post or a rock or something to really belt it out so everybody can hear their What a great sound. Just that sweet kind of flute-like sound that comes out of them. Now, this is western meadowlark. That's mostly what we see in our area. However, it's possible, maybe a little further south, to see the eastern meadowlark. So there is a western and an eastern. We usually see the western. It's kind of funny how birds have western, eastern names. One bird that we see in our area is the eastern phoebe. Now that's one I'm not sure why they call eastern, because there's not a western phoebe. There is a Say's phoebe and a black phoebe, but the western phoebe, eastern phoebe, is one that you might see in your backyard. So this one is recognizable by behavior, I think. You'll see him sitting on a stick just like this, and then it'll flick its tail as it's moving about or singing. Let's listen to the eastern phoebe. This one. Sound familiar from your backyard? There are phoebes will often make a nest in your, like under your deck or on your patio, something like that. And these phoebes, you'll recognize the nest because there's a lot of moss in the nest. And phoebes are pretty clean parents. So these don't leave drippings and stuff like some bird nests do that hook onto the side of your house or by a light fixture or something like that. So if the nest has a lot of moss in it, that's the one I like to leave because I know it's going to stay kind of clean compared to some other nests that you might find on your porch, like the barn swallow. Now this one is a little messier. They can have not only the mud sprayed on the side of the house, but also their feces as well. So the barn swallows, I know a lot of people like to not keep on their porch. Hey, another bird that I know you know is the black-capped chickadee. Pretty easy to identify, but it does have a couple of different sounds. So in the winter time, we've been hearing chickadee-dee-dee, chickadee-dee-dee, but it also has this spring sound that I just love. So you can remember this one. I think it kind of sounds like cheeseburger. It makes me hungry. Cheeseburger. So listen for that sound in your backyard and you'll probably come up with a chickadee. Another great backyard bird, some people call it the upside down bird, is the white-breasted nuthatch. This one is really common at our feeders. And the white-breasted nuthatch has a nice, well, kind of a nice sound. Let's listen to that. When you hear this, you might think that you have a woodpecker in your backyard. Now, this one you have to keep a good eye on. You can see that sharp beak, and of course, by behavior, you can identify this. But we also have one that I love to see, and that's the red-breasted nuthatch. See the streamline of this little guy? And it is a little bit smaller than our white-breasted nuthatch. So the red-breasted nuthatch has a little bit different sound. The red-breasted nuthatch you often find a little bit more in areas where you have pine trees compared to white-breasted nuthatches that are pretty much everywhere. So watch for a little bit smaller and that nice rosy breast. Here's one we've been hearing a lot, and that's the white-throated sparrow. Now, you probably think, I've got all kinds of sparrows on the ground. This one does have a little yellow on its head, and of course it has a white throat. But what's really fun about the white-throated sparrow that I love the most is its sound. I think it sounds like, oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada. The white-breasted nuthatch, or white-throated one that you'll see coming through the yard in lots of numbers. If you have a lot of leaf litter on the ground, you're going to see these on the ground. But what a great call they have when they start singing. It's just so beautiful out there. So this is one of the more special sparrows compared to all the other brown jobs that you find on the ground. Well, here's one that I'm so glad comes back every year, and that's the Baltimore Oriole. What a pretty sight that we have in Baltimore Orioles as they start to arrive. The male orange is beautiful. The female will be a little bit more yellow looking. And hopefully you have your jelly feeders out to attract these guys. And a beautiful song. Wanted to know. So this one has a nice flute-like sound, but it's much more firm or pronounced, that flute-like sound in the Baltimore Oriole. Watch for orange in your yard. The other color I like to watch for is this one, rose-breasted grosbeak. I bet you don't know why they call him that. Just kidding. Of course, he's got a rose-breasted area right there on his chest. And look at that beak. That's why they call him grosbeak. Beautiful bird to come to your yard. And maybe you haven't heard the sound of this one. Again, beautiful song to have going on in your backyard along with those Baltimore Orioles. It'll just sound like a symphony out there. Now, one thing that happens as the rose-breasted grosbeaks show up is that also the females show up at the same time. And these can be kind of confusing, but look at that beak. Nice, big, thick beak. These can get confused with other birds that are feeders. They all look pretty similar, don't they? So we're also seeing female red-winged blackbirds, and look at that black and sharp beak. They have kind of a buffy undertone to them and lots of streaking on the breast. The female rose-breasted grosbeak has a very vibrant or a very prominent eye stripe across the eye. So as you know, the red-wing does too, but this one seems just more prominent than others. And again, you'll have to take a look at that beak to be able to tell the difference. However, if you have purple finches at your feeder, that makes it even more confusing because the female purple finch is kind of similar. It is smaller than these other two birds, and the beak is darker. Notice how the rose-breasted grosbeak has a lighter colored beak. The female purple finch also has a lot more brownish color, a lot of streaking on its belly, and that eye line across the eye isn't quite as prominent, although it's definitely there. So these are three birds that might get kind of confusing at your feeder. Look close at the beak, look at that eye line, and also some of the streaking on the belly to tell the difference. Speaking of streaking on the belly, this one is kind of a cool bird. The ovenbird is one that is pretty neat to hear. You hear it all morning long if you live near the woods. The ovenbird has some requirements to it. It does like to be in an area where the woods are really thick, that there's an expanse of woods. So it is a species of concern as we start to see our woods fragment and getting into small proportions as more development happens. Let's listen to the oven. Some people think it sounds like teacher, 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 teacher really fast. Ovenbirds we'll hear through the summer months, but really common to hear in the woods. So when you hear that teacher, 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 teacher as you're hiking through the woods, you'll know it's the ovenbird. And of course, the ovenbird is called the ovenbird because it does make an oven-like nest. Look how tucked in she is. She even puts a little top on it. So it does look a little like an oven. That's the ovenbird. Now, one I really want you to watch for. This one is super unique to Tamarac Refuge in northern Minnesota. This bird has seen a lot of decline in its population. And our area here in northern Minnesota is one of the few places that we still have a good population of the golden wing warbler. We're going to see lots of warblers coming through our area, but the golden wing warbler is pretty special. We're trying to keep habitat available for the golden wing warbler, which is usually some mix of aspen trees. It likes to nest in those kind of areas. And if you don't see it, maybe you'll hear it. It does have a pretty identifiable sound. So this one always sings that Z, B, B, B. So it has the Z and 3 B's. Z, B, B, B. I know you'll have fun watching for this one. What a great sight if you're able to see the golden wing warbler. It is a treat. One activity that I'd encourage you to do, or if you have kids, it's a great activity to step outside and do, and that's to make a sound map. This is where you can just take a blank sheet of paper, draw where you're at, and then identify around you all of the calls that you hear. We'd love to see your sound map shared with us here at Tamarac. You can email it to tamarac@fws.gov. We'd love to see what kind of sounds you have in your yard compared to our refuge. Well, there are lots of sounds to be heard out there. I hope you're listening to the symphony in your backyard, and I invite you to come up to the refuge to also hear what we have going on in our backyard. Bird watching is a great way to really take care of yourself. Get outside and do some social distancing out in the woods. Bring your binoculars and take a hike out at Tamarac National Wildlife Refuge. We'll see you there.